Mumonkan, case 37. Joshu's oak tree. A monk asked Joshu, what is the meaning of Dharma's coming to China? Joshu said, the oak tree in the garden. Mumon's comment. If you understand Joshu's answer intimately, there is no shotgun before you, no my hatred to come. Mumon's verse. Words cannot express things. Speech does not convey the spirit. Swayed by words, one is lost. Awakened by phrases, one is bewildered. Good afternoon. The world thanks you for being here. For being a people of practice. A people living under vows. The very first one of which says, however innumerable all these are, I vow to save them all. So we are gathered here in this session for the purpose of saving all beings. That sounds pretty dramatic. There's 7 billion of our types out here, and how many more before, and how many to come. So billions and billions and billions of beings. We vow to save them all. There's I think it's Chinese, but there's an Asian story that we were flying in an airplane. And we happened to notice this small bird. We watched the bird closely, and the bird goes down to a stream, picks up a beak of water, just a few drops, and flies over where this raging forest fire is consuming everything. Drops this. The beaks drops. Comes back to the stream, picks up a few more drops. Back. Drops on the raging forest fire. And we watch this with incredulity. In the last few years, we've seen pictures of fires out west. And one bird with a beak full of water doesn't look like much of a match. And so we asked the bird, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm over here, dropping it over here. You say, gee, that's great, but I don't think you're going to have much influence. I think probably most of it is evaporating before it even gets down to the ground. The bird replies, yes, that's true. No argument there. But I cannot do it. There's much suffering down there. Trees are suffering. Animals are suffering. People are suffering. The earth is suffering. And I cannot do anything other than my beak held 1,000,000 gallons of water. 1,000,000 gallons of water. And as it is, just a few drops. And that's sort of the situation we're in. A few people, some people attending from far away. And so we vow to save all beings. Yet we are a very few. And so we ask ourselves, up front or unconsciously, what's the point of this? What's the point of gathering in session? Far and close. Engaging in foreign ceremony. Practicing zazen. Chanting. Now, can this have any impact? Weather doesn't seem to have changed any. This is a conventional way of thinking. By thinking this way, we reveal the narrowness, shallowness of our understanding. It's hard to appreciate. It's hard to even know what to appreciate. How what is happening here, what's happening here, radiates like the sun. Reaching not only the forest fire there, people to be saved here, but reaches out into the cosmos infinitely. And allowing for Einstein's relativity of time, reaches into the cosmos of the past, the future. Understanding specifically how this might happen is beyond all of us. Of Peter. But with continued zazen, with sincere zazen, feeling develops down here. And it is this feeling down here that makes clear how this practice, this session, with few people, radiating like the sun. Touching people's lives, situations, war in Ukraine, the war here, the war there, the war there, the war there. Starvation here, starvation there. Economic desperation there, and there. And those are just the ones that we can tally by reading the New York Times for a few days. Beyond that, this practice radiation reaches everybody, everything, every time. And it is with this appreciation that we are encouraged to practice. Zazen is a practice. Session is a practice. But if each of us in our everyday lives going about this business and that business, with a clear mind and a dedicated heart, all those gutsy activities that all of us have to engage in, they all radiate also. Don't doubt it. Don't think it's the rambling, crazy old man who's read too many Zen books. And that's why it's important to conduct ourselves as vessels of Dharma at all times, in all activities, because everything radiates. And if we're leading a mixed up life, sinful life, want life, even in just the smallest ways now and then, that radiates too. Some of us might call this radiation. Winter session, 2023. Today I read a column from Mumonkan. Don't ask Jushu. What is the meaning? Bodhidharma coming from the west. Jushu answered, the oak tree in the garden. I told Roshi the other day that he made a complete mistake there. He should have said the blue spruce in my front yard. Or for that matter, the scraggly pine. It's having a hard time making it in difficult soil down there around the corner. He could have said the brambles that are just about everywhere. He could have said just about anything. In fact, it's too limited. He could have said it. And for some reason, out of his own understanding, his own depth, he said, the oak tree didn't grow. There were probably many oak trees. Maybe the one in the garden he had a special affection for. You spend much time around trees, they start becoming your friends. And not every tree can be your best friend. However, friendly relationship. You tend to gravitate towards this one or that one for reasons that are difficult to explain. Maybe you planted it. Maybe for some reason in the past tried to kill it. It came back. For some reason, you feel close. When Sandra was alive, I would take her to the hairdresser. Particular place down in Manny's waiting room, lots of windows. One bank of windows, it was a large playing field, looked like an athletic field or something like that. On the far side, there was this little pine tree. Someone had made the grand decision to allow it to grow. And so they did. It was over about 15 feet high, but it was nicely shaded. And I remember looking at that tree, really, say one I looked at more than once. And I have this realization, not up here, down here. That the tree and I, we were doing the same thing. Tree was doing it in a tree's way. I was doing it in a human way. And yet that distinction, important in some ways, was absolutely unimportant We were doing the same thing. Struggling in the same way. Doing the same thing. Sandra doesn't get her haircut there anymore. Get a haircut anywhere. And so I don't have occasion very often to go to that particular area. But sometimes I always say hello, good afternoon, morning. Tree always responds. Good to see you again. How are you? I usually respond, I haven't made any great mistakes yet, but today is still young. So, and so perhaps Jushu had a particular friendship with the oak tree in the garden. In the Mumonkan collection, The Gateless Gate, was a small volume, 48 columns, and came after the Blue Cliff record with 100 columns. Predated it by 100 years or so. And authorities in the matter consider the Blue Rock collection to be one of the preeminent examples of Chinese literature in that period. Preeminent example of Chinese spiritualism in the sense of conjuring, religious, spiritual. And it's really quite beautiful. There are verses in there in terms of phrases that are really spectacular. One that I always come to is every soldier holds the pivotal point on the field of battle. I hold the pivotal point because I'm sitting here chattering along, but because I occupy a point, just like everyone here occupies a point, and that point where you're sitting, and you folks at home where you're sitting, that is the pivotal point. Another one is verse. North, east, south, west. Together let us come. And in the evening moonlight, see the 10,000 people. So the Blue Cliff collection became a real much used collection of poems, book of great literature. And it became so popular that it tended to, in certain quarters at least, lose its edge. It didn't lose its edge, but people did not respect its edge. And so some 100 years later, Mumonkan came along and put together a second collection. There are many collections, but these are the two most famous in the Renaissance. And he put together a second collection, and instead of 100 or trying to best it with 200 or 101 poems, he dropped it back to 48. And whereas the Blue Rock collection, each particular column goes on with verses, comments on verses, and witty sayings, and insightful sayings, and every man occupies the pivotal point on the field of battle, and so forth and so on. Mumonkan's commentary is quieter. More subtle in some way. And so, as in today's code, I'll cast Jushu. What's meaning the patriarch coming from the west? Jushu replies, the oak tree in the garden. And then Mumonkan offers a short commentary in a short verse. And that's it. Not that long. Okay. And yet, as in today's call, the oak tree, the short verses, the short commentary, the small selection of poems, it's tremendous impact. Just about everybody has heard of Joshu's move. Jushu is an interesting teacher. He and get over a fail for names. If you look in combination of the Blue Rock and the Gateless Gate, Jushu and Mumonkan have the largest number of cones. Some people just say, well, Renzon, for example, we follow Renzon. But maybe 2 or 3. Maybe 2. Interestingly enough, one of them is an interaction between him and Jushu. Perhaps we get to that. So Jushu says, the oak tree in the garden. And if it comes by chance that we're working on this oak tree, Jushu, his best friend, that he perhaps has sat under many a time. Not much to grab on to. It's considered a lean column. as compared to the second column in the Blue Rock collection. I could go stop. One day everybody was going around and a premature, and then becomes this mysterious character who has this interaction with Nikyu, and they go back and forth on freedom from karma and submission to karma. Itself is half page. And here we have just a simple reply. The old tree, the one in the garden. The beginning student. Hey, what are you latch on to this thing? Got the leaves. Struck to the trunk. Favor any direction with its foliage. And what God's good name, there's an oak tree in the garden, and then you do Dharma coming from the west. Well, here you need to understand a little bit about the question. Meaning, patriarch, sometimes named, more often just patriarch. What's the meaning of the patriarch coming from? And sometimes this question, I'm sure, was asked by a student who was really kind of perplexed by this whole thing. Why didn't he go east? Why didn't someone else go? So forth and so on. But most of the time it was a test question. There was a way of, in the Rinzai nomenclature, guest interrogating the host. Come in and say, young man sitting over there. We'll see if we get a rise out of it. How does he respond? If we poke him in this sort of way, how does he come back? We'll poke him with this question. Does the meaning patriarch coming from the west? And we'll watch what he does. And we'll try to interpret and understand his response. His response will be sort of a window into his own understanding. So it's sort of like opening the door real quick of the window and say, "Who's in there?" I said, "Shut the door, let him in the cold." Shut the door, let him in the cold. What does that have to do with saving? And so, since we can't make much sense out of Jushu, we'll have to make some sense out of the tree itself. And so perhaps allowing for this tree and that tree, allowing for an oak tree in a garden in China and a blue spruce in my front yard. I can sit down in a chair and look at that blue spruce for a long time. I have on one occasion sat and looked at the blue spruce for several hours, going through all the scientific and technical things that I might say about blue spruce. Well, it's this kind of genus or whatnot. Yorin would know more about that sort of thing. And it's been here, this development that we live in, got it together in the early 60s, and I'm sure it was planted then. And, you go through all of these specifications, and slowly but surely they drop away. When it was planted and by whom and for what purpose, and why on that side of the lawn instead of that side of the lawn, all of these rational curiosities, questions, some might be kind of important. How long does a blue spruce live? I looked that up. 600 years. And yet it has been planted in my front yard, I'm pretty sure, no older than the house. The house is about 60 years old. So let's say the spruce was planted at the time the house was built. It's 60 years into a 500-year life. The fact that it's going to live, hopefully, a full life, years, 500 something. And that I am, within days and months and a few years, coming to the end of my life. And in some senses, I'm a real child. The blue spruce has just begun to flex its adulthood. And the blue spruce, the Jushu's oak tree, they lead a simple life. Hey, spruce, what are you doing? Just out here growing. I'm blue sprucing along. Do anything else? Burn your teeth? I mean, you're soaking up a lot of water. Will I provide a space in which squirrels can run? Sometimes birds will nest in my branches and leaves. I dance with the wind. Some of my fellow trees have unfortunately danced with some pretty rigorous winds and they got pulled down. But luckily, that hasn't happened to me. I just do anything else. I mean, that's pretty limited repertoire, a world of great complexity. Spruce thinks a little bit and says, well, every morning I rejoice. Sun comes up. Evening, I say thank you as the sun goes down. And I find that sitting there with the spruce, once I go through whatever chatter happens to be the agenda of the day, sitting with the spruce slowly, sometimes begrudgingly, and some witty. We start settling down. I'm sitting in a chair on my front porch, so I'm already kind of settled. I have a Black Russian in my hand, favorite drink. That even though feel I should be in there, kind of, relaxing from whatever has been terrorizing me. I find that this kind of public relaxation, it's called, lubricated by alcohol, that kind of settling down is, in some sense, forgotten. It becomes the kind of settling down that we have an opportunity to feel, experience here at session. Where everything is planned and done for us by the officers who work diligently, long hours, long before session was due. Tradition which provides a general framework to hold us safely. And in this environment, sitting, breathing, and so when I sit on the front porch and look at the spruce, some commentators on koans in general will say that these crazy comments by Zen Master, 5 pounds of flax, no tree in the garden, and so forth. Okay. Spontaneous manifestations of their enlightened state. That's not false. But at least to my reading recently, they sound a bit about as if saying commentators. Jushu was so free of entrenched cognitions and behavioral styles and all that. So free. And when this monk asked, the meaning of the old man coming from the west, that Jushu just first thing that came to his mind, the oak tree in the garden. Maybe he was sitting under it at the time. But at least for this particular individual, that reply has become analysis of all of life. And has become increasingly unsatisfactory. And when Jushu says, "Oh, tree in the garden," he's intimately involved with this student, this monk. And he might have all sorts of spontaneous pop-off remarks that he could make, but for reasons unfathomable, this is the Lord that he said. And I've come to see these kinds of remarks, and Roshan can correct this tomorrow if necessary, but I've seen them as the teacher's compassionate attempt to balance an imbalancing to do away with dualism. Because the student comes in with this Bodhidharma, the patriarch. My God, what a person. How could I ever imagine him, be like him, understand his profundity? I'm just down here on the earth. I'm just a 50-year-old person instead of a 600-year-old tree. I mean, what can I make of any of this? So Jushu takes this big thing, Dharma, traveling from the west, bringing the Dharma, the people of China. Oak tree in the garden. And so he's saying that the Dharma is nothing more than an oak tree. Or catch poison ivy. And in the same time, he's saying the oak tree is every bit as magnificent as Buddha. The two bow to each other. And so in this koan and others that sort of fit this pattern that I've been thinking, the invitation is to, as some of you have heard me say time and again, become sincere. To not have these warring parts, fantasies. Small little cubby holes of burnt out incense or what have you. But all through bow to each other. Bow the bowing, frustration. that accepts these frustrations equally. Motion valves on the mat. The mat says hello. So the beginner who wanders into here doesn't realize that there's certain protocols around that. Today, check that mat out, what it feels like. Look, stops at making its foot, kneels down on it. Someone else says, oh, come on, let's get out of here. It's more fun elsewhere. And the mat says, thank you. Have a good day. We want these floors. Polishing them. But for the most part, about the only thought we give to them. Someone Roshi had this saying about King. He said, put your soul, so you well, put your soul on the soles of your feet. So that as your feet, and so there is an intimacy. And so when Dharma comes from the West, meets Emperor Wu, so it blows him off, wanders up Shaolin, good spot in the cave, you look at the wall. He spends a long time looking at the wall. You can imagine, the tour guide's coming. Ignore that guy, he's been there a long time. And the monks say, why is he always taking the best spot? And all of these people, places, things, events, all bowing to each other. Thank you. Says Marty. Or the wife is crying. It is as now she accompanies me everywhere I go. She was sick and ill. She was confined to a bed. But having passed that particular koa, that test, she has received transmission. She radiates. And what we're doing in session is cultivating an intimacy with existence. This is all existence. This is existence. And so the practice is frequently taught and read and whatnot. It's somewhat discreet. Whereas what we're really doing practicing intimacy with creation so that we can bow to the oak tree. And without any superstition or any fantasy, we can see the oak tree bowing to us. We can modify Joshu's koan slightly and say, why the patriarch come from the west? The oak tree in the garden is bowing to you. Happy moves. Spend some time leaning up against it. Let us lead. Call upon you in the fall. But it's bare branches. Teach you not attachment. But it's flowering buds in spring. Teach you about eternity.